Hey everybody, welcome to season 3 of Surface Level, a show that takes a look at society's expectations and rejects the ones we don't see it for, all from the perspective of 3 black queer best friends. I'm one of your hosts, Jordan, and today, Tony, Damon, and I are discussing safe sex and risky business. Has advancements in HIV prevention led to riskier sex practices? How has party drugs disproportionately affected black queer communities? This is ParTy and Play. ParTy and Play. All right, you guys. So, a lot has happened since we took a break in December.
Yes.
I've been at home praying. I don't know about y'all.
You have been at home, and for starters, Damon has added approximately 60 new pieces of art to his living room as of this morning. It may have changed this afternoon. Don't know.
Love the gallery wall.
Love the gallery house at this point.
Definitely gallery house.
Tony is fully vaccinated, and he is about to start island hopping.
The bitch is back.
Hello. And, of course, me and Damon will be on this camp that we call America while Tony is living his best life.
Tony is a super spreader.
Guess what?
But not the way you think, baby.
Something.
Oh, we know. And me, yours truly, I wore a entire latex outfit for the very first time in my life for this episode's cover art.
And we had to lay her down on the floor because she couldn't stand, sit, or move.
You need a crew to come lift her up on a gurney.
Those pants were not my size, but they were my size. So if you are a listener of the podcast and you are not familiar with our Instagram, make sure that you look at our Instagram at Surface Level Podcast. We do have art for every single episode that we record. Mm-hmm. And
more art that goes onto Mod's walls.
Right. We'll print one of them out into a poster. But there's a lot of latex in this week's. But today we're talking about sex with the emphasis on how it impacts our health. But you know how we do. We love to warm up with a game.
Gotta warm the girls up.
Always gotta use lube.
Oh, what? Hold on.
Because you never should just
well,
you never want to penetrate. A dry moment.
Well, we were talking about games.
We
played a game.
We were. I mean, maybe that's
about sex.
Maybe that's a game for Tony.
Y'all super spreading.
Yeah.
So we're gonna play a game to help listeners, get up to speed with what we've been up to since December. All right?
Great.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question: how many underground parties have you been to since COVID started?
Oh, underground.
Uh-huh.
By underground, like literally underground?
No, like illegal.
Oh, nothing's illegal. 5?
Okay.
I think not many. Just but they've been like speakeasies. Like
what's that?
It means you got to speak easy.
Don't speak too much in my face.
I ain't really been to shit. Like, even when we've gone somewhere, we went to this one activity, and I was like, okay, there's a balcony. I'm going to stand out there until I get cold, because I'm not standing inside with all you girls. I don't know. People make me uneasy. I don't like people in regular life, so I'm not really, clamoring to get out and have to sneak around with people I naturally don't want to be around anyway.
So COVID has allowed you to be more of who you are.
Lean into it, baby.
I know that's right. I've been to 3.
Okay. And impossible.
Definitely an impossible, because sometimes it's blurry. You don't know if it's a party or if it's what is this? So I know that it's only April, but what has been your happiest memory of 2021 so far?
Oh,
I know.
Has there been any joy?
Has there been any joy? One happy moment for me was an impromptu visit from my dad and my aunt Crystal and my dad's girl and their friends. They were celebrating because my aunt and them, they actually work down at the Javits. They are vaccinating New York City.
And doing the Lord's work.
Right. And so they just were celebrating being back employed, because a lot of them had lost their jobs and now they're all working again. And they were in Harlem celebrating, and then they came to my apartment impromptu, and we had a dance party. When I say it was so black and beautiful, and it sparked so much joy in my life. And they were like, okay, Tony, your place is the spot. I was like, this seems like a pattern.
Did you play Before I Let Go?
well, actually, no, but we played you know what I did play?
What?
I'm curious about our new theme song for Surface Level podcast is Curious. You guys go look it up. I want to know what's on your mind. I'm curious. That's our new anthem. So yeah.
I went home for my mom's 61st birthday. It was just me and her, and we had a really good time, like went to lunch together. And like I haven't been able to spend a lot of time with her, obviously, and with some of the things that happened in my family, it was just nice to have a little quiet moment with her. So that was nice.
That is sweet.
Yeah, less dramatic than Tony and his
Listen,
family reunions.
You know, I live for the drama.
You know. I actually will say that my happiest moment was with you guys.
Here she go.
No, seriously.
That's a lie.
No,
That's a lie.
When I actually tell the story, you're going to believe me. But when we went to D.C., so that trip was a little bit crazy because like it was the weekend after the insurrection.
Yes.
So we weren't sure if we were going. But we did go, and we went there to visit our friend Dorian, who was our guest on episode 1 of season 2. And we just had a really great time, just sort of like being away from the city. And it was just a beautiful moment. Like I really enjoyed the hot tub.
Oh, yes.
I really enjoyed.
And it was like, how cold was it that night?
Extremely cold.
Now let me tell you about these lying heifers. We went to D.C. to move my sister in.
No, you went to D.C.
I
to move
forgot.
No, baby. No, we went to
forgot
D.C. because I was just like, I'm going to move my sister in. They were like, oh, we'll come. I said, if y'all come, y'all got to help.
We did help.
We
moved all those bags from the car
they moved,
to
and then sat there and watched me put together every piece of furniture in that apartment.
I can't build the furniture.
That's why I can't get these sissies a hammer. They can't do nothing.
That was not mentioned. Furniture putting together.
Mm-mm.
I don't do that.
Useless. What's the next question?
Okay, so in the spirit of today's topic about sex health, I thought it would be fun to recite a sexually explicit rap. And you guys are going to name that rapper from the options that I provide.
Cardi B.
I want that jet lag from fucking and flying.
Ooh.
Shoot a child in your mouth while I'm riding.
Oh my God.
Is it Rico Nasty, Lil Nas X, Cardi B, or Cakes Da Killa?
Ooh. Well, look at me knowing the answer.
You know the answer.
I'm a gag if I get it wrong, but I think I know it's Lil Nas X.
What do you think?
I don't know. Rico Nasty? I don't know. I thought she sang.
Didn't know she rapped.
Thought she sang or something. No, it's Lil Nas X. He just
ding 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 ding.
He said that?
Yeah,
he said that.
You said that? Come on, Candy. No, he has a song called Montero. Call Me by Your Name.
Call me by your name.
It's a very sexually explicit song. But we love the liberated kids these days. And then the last question: what's one thing you want to accomplish in 2021? Could be big, could be small, could be intrinsic.
Ooh, this is real meta. It got real meta.
It got real big. I was just like, oh.
Ooh, it's very meta.
It was.
What do you want to accomplish in 2021, Damon?
It could be. I want to accomplish a really good episode right now. It could be small, could be big. It could be,
I want to continue to gag the girls, week after week.
You know what? I don't want to be bored.
Yes.
And that's also real meta. But it's just like professionally, personally, I just want to continue to experience new things, continue to stretch myself. I don't want to be bored.
Yeah, I think for me, adulting, I'm just now kind of arriving to it. I know people think people think, oh girl, you doing it right. I'm like, yeah, okay. You walking a day in my shoes.
All right now.
But I think becoming more of an adult and just being more responsible while still, having a good old clatchet time. I think that's what I want to do. Is like you're saying, I want to have fun. I want to be an adult, but I don't want to be like, all right, now it's time for me, Ma, to go to bed every night.
I am me, Ma.
At 9 p.m.
Jordan, what are your aspirations in life?
Oh,
So yeah, that's my answer.
My aspirations.
Jordan, what are your aspirations? Speaking of which,
I mean, I'm in the studio right now, so obviously
I'm in the studio.
she's in the
I am
studio.
David Ruffin.
Girl.
And these are the Temptations.
I mean, I'm in the studio. Like, we're not with her.
no. That's like a part of my answer. So like, I'm in the studio right now, so obviously I'm in the mindset of the podcast.
Yes.
So that's top of mind right now, and I think that what I want to accomplish in 2021 is to continue to grow our platform. I feel like we've received so much positive feedback and so many really touching messages from people who are listening, who feel like it's making an impact on their life. So I just want to continue doing that. It's been really fulfilling. So I'm really excited about that. And we're going to check in at Beyond the Surface Level, the finale, to see if, if you're not bored and if you're having fun.
I'm bored.
I'm gonna tell
and
you
if we
I'm
grew,
bored.
and if we grew this podcast at all. Are you out there? Are you listening?
Please listen. This shit costs a lot. So moving into our conversation, we wanted to start this season this way because looking back on some of the things we shared last season, we had an episode titled Undetectable, which was about HIV destigmatization, and we shared some really personal experiences, notably Tony's public reveal of his status, and it ended up actually being our best performing episode ever. So thank you guys for listening, sharing. I know Tony feels especially loved with all the feedback that he got from the episode.
Absolutely.
And we just thought it was really important to advance on that conversation and continue the conversation around sexual health. So that's where we're starting for season 3.
Yes.
So to kind of give a bit of background about where our heads were, I guess, in a different time. So what was everyone's idea toward sex, their sex life, before PrEP and before the time of being undetectable and having drugs that you can't transmit? Jordan, let's start with you.
I think that sex in my earlier years
I think the old queen.
I think it was a lot of anxiety. I think that, entering into the community and becoming sexually active, I think that there's a lot of emphasis on HIV, right? And I think that before, we've had these amazing advancements in medicine, I think that you had to sort of rely on this other person to really be truthful. And your only line of defense was condoms. There may have been more, but for me, that was the only line of defense that I knew to have. And so, I think that my approach before was like very anxiety inducing. I think that now it's obviously different. But I mean, I feel like I would have sex sometimes and I'd just be like, oh my goodness, like, did something happen? Like, is it happening?
This is it.
So that was kind of like the experience for me.
Tony.
It's kind of similar to what Jordan was saying. Like in a pre-PrEP era, it definitely was giving like condoms was your only option, and you were preached to use condoms, and it was shoved down your throat, slapped in your face. It was.
Are we still talking about the condom?
You had.
Right. Where are we taking this? Sounds fun.
It was. You like to be slapped and choked and
I
stuff
didn't
like
say
that.
Jordan said
No,
sounds fun.
I'm talking about him, but I'm looking at you because you in it too. But I think I was very worried about becoming HIV positive before I actually became HIV positive, because that was also what was pushed. And there was a lot of stigma around it. And I'm sure that I was an active participant in that stigma, because I remember people throwing around like, oh, you got the HIV, like stuff like that. And people still say that, but that was, I didn't even realize that I was probably contributing. I was contributing, or people around me were contributing, and I wasn't checking them because I also didn't know a lot about sex. Wasn't very educated on sexual matters. Didn't get the education from family really. And in school, you watched one video probably, and that was given. It was given childbirth. It wasn't even giving like, I don't think I really learned in high school about it either. So ignorance was bliss, and you don't know what you don't know. So that's my answer on that. But what about you, Damon?
My answer's, I guess, a little different. I think for me, it was just like condom use is a given, and then that was like what I did. But like all the apprehension, I would like, especially when I was younger, I wouldn't say I had it. I think that I recently watched this thing on HBO Max called It's a Sin.
Oh, yeah.
And it's another one of those things about the AIDS crisis, and I think they do some things really well, some things that I didn't love, like centering the white twink again as the main character and using his people of color to kind of feed his story through without going into their background. Didn't love that. But what I think that it did a really, really good job of was juxtaposing youth with the experience of contracting HIV and evolving into AIDS in that time period.
Yeah.
Because when you're 20, 19, 20, that young, you feel invincible. Right. You feel like you can go out, do anything, and nothing's going to happen to you.
Ever.
And I think that show did an excellent job of...
He said your knees don't hurt.
No, seriously.
Right.
Hangovers don't exist.
Hangovers don't exist.
Like, you're invincible.
It's just like you do crazy shit. Like you go out, get on the train, fall asleep, wake up in the Bronx. Period. That is a crazy concept to me now.
Listen.
And I've done that when I was
you ever fall asleep on the train and rode all the way to Brooklyn, back to Harlem, back to Brooklyn?
That has happened. I woke up one time, I was like, where am I?
The last stop.
But like that sense of invincible, it's just like, I'm invincible. I know if I use a condom, then everything's fine. And I'm just like, that's how I thought about sex. And it was really, really, I guess, lighthearted in my approach to it, especially because at that point, I wasn't necessarily like, looking for love or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But as like we've, I guess, evolved and learned more about what it means to be undetectable, what it means to have treatment, what it means to be on PrEP. Have you all had experiences? I guess, Tony, how's your experience been dating as a person who is undetectable? And then for Jordan and I, like, have you dated someone who is undetectable, and what's that been like for you mentally? Tony, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think in the beginning when I first found out I was not undetectable, HIV positive, at first once I got medication and treatment, I was good about not letting it affect me, and letting myself be able to still live a normal, active sex life. But then later on, and even present day, like I talk to you guys about this all the time, that it became a thing where it's always in the back of my mind that I'm HIV positive, and it did and does mentally affect my sexual drive. And it wasn't until after talking about being HIV positive last season that I actually am now starting to have conversations with other positive people who say that they experience the same thing. And that's a conversation I never got to have. Yeah. That I now am like, okay, well, bitch, I'm not crazy. Like, this is normal. But I actually, when I think back on it, I don't recall having an experience where someone told me that they were HIV positive before engaging in sex. Now, it doesn't mean that I haven't unknowingly slept with someone who was positive. I just didn't know. Like, they didn't disclose that information, which you don't have to, which I now am more educated and know better. But I have had experience with telling someone that I'm HIV positive before engaging in sexual activity. And I think the vulnerability seemed to, like, it was hot to them. It was like, oh, you could tell me this, like,
right.
You are a God-fearing man. It was given like,
yes, you better tell me the truth.
It was almost like they were more into me or more, and I was like, wow. So standing in your truth and just coming out with it, people put more respect on your name, and I love that. So what about you, Damon?
That's would have been my experience on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Just because I think that people who are undetectable and who are managing their health are likely going to the doctor, keeping up with any type of testing way more than some people who maybe are on PrEP, aren't on PrEP, whatever the scenario may be. And that's kind of what I found. Like, I've dated a guy and he was just like, listen, I am religiously going to the doctor every 3 months, having my blood checked, whatever, so on and so forth. So, like,
right, yeah.
And I'm also managing my HIV through my medicine, so I'm undetectable, so I can't transmit to you anyway.
Okay.
And I think that it's just been a thing that at this point in my life, there is a level of knowledge, and knowledge is power. Like, stop being a fucking idiot. Like, nothing's going to happen to you by having sex with, or being involved with someone who is undetectable. And it's that simple. Like, it's never been a thing for me with someone I've dated who is open and honest about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Jordan, what about you?
I share the same answer as you, Tony. I haven't had sex with someone who, like, I've never had sex with someone who I knowingly knew had HIV positive status. But to your point, that doesn't mean that it hasn't happened.
Right.
I can't say that I've had a detailed conversation about status with all of my partners.
Right.
So it could have happened, but just, beyond my knowledge.
So do you guys think that status is becoming less of a point of conversation? Like there was a big point in like hookup app culture, Grindr, so on, where people would always be like, "Oh, what's your status?"
Yeah.
Or people put their status in the, like, is it important to people anymore? And I don't want to diminish it that much, but like, what do you, Jordan? Maybe start there since.
So I want to start with a question because I do remember those days when
What's our status? No. Okay. What's your status at the bank?
What's your status at the bank? Ooh, we don't want to talk about the last part of that that monologue where she was cashing a check.
Oh,
But the
didn't
country
age well.
did that too. So I remember vividly, like you said, like back in the day when there was like hookup culture, like what's your status? But there was also this question like, are you DD free? What I know that it meant disease free, but what does that second D mean?
drug.
Never knew that.
Interesting.
Found that out on today.
I don't remember seeing DD free stuff.
You could see it right now, child. Get on Grindr.
Really interesting. Okay.
That's fun. Okay, so I learned something new, but the answer to my actual question is I think that I do think that is less of a conversation, and I think it's because people now have the power to protect themselves more. I talked about this in my last response, but I think before you instilled so much faith in this person that they were telling you the truth. And I think now it's sort of like, you know what? I don't really have to know what's going on with you. I know that I'm protected. I know that I'm doing what I have to do to take treatment or preventative medication to make sure that I am okay.
Yeah.
And that I am safe. And I was even looking at some official websites, but condoms are 98% effective and PrEP is 99% effective. Like just like that sort of like shocked me a little bit that PrEP is actually more effective than, and I mean this is specifically for Descovy, which is one brand of the of preventative medication. But I think that people just have the confidence and the power to protect themselves. So you don't really have to rely so much on the other person sort of disclosing everything.
Tony.
Yeah. I remember being a young lad and you would get on those apps and it was asked perpetually, like, what's your status? Are you, negative? Like, even when you would go and meet someone in person, it would be like asked, even if someone was lying and told you what they wanted to tell you. I think it was more of it still happened. I've definitely seen and noticed that there's been a trend of the question being asked less and less. And I think that's obviously due to the advancement in medicine. So I kind of equated, like I'm calling it like a pre-prep and a post-prep era of how everyone's moving, because now everyone is, if you go on Grindr, if you go on Jack, if you go on those apps, they have in their bio, what have you, like on prep, taking prep, whatever they want to say to let you know that they're taking that medication, that preventative medication. And again, whether it be true or false, it's like it's the risk you take.
Right.
So
I also think it's weird that people approach that conversation purely from the sense of a person who is positive, as if putting all the onus. Like, you don't have to disclose your medical history to somebody. Like, if I, as a person, am participating in, quote, risky sexual practices and behavior, I am assuming said risk.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is my responsibility
yes.
to use a condom. It is my responsibility to take medication that I can use as preventative treatment. It is my responsibility to not have sex with a person that I may not know well.
Right.
Or my decision to do that.
Yeah.
The
and
power
then, like,
is yours.
right, and we always like want to blame, like, that's bullshit. So like we spoke a lot about kind of the post prep era. How is that the advancements in medication affected our own personal practices? Like, are there things that you do now that you didn't do before? In regards to condom use, multiple partners, however you get down with the get down. Miss T?
So, I mean, first, for starters, because I just talked about like being in my head, and it's meta. It's very meta for me.
Very meta.
It's very meta
It's very
today.
meta, and sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, like, what's going on? But, I'm great at this. I have I'm amazing sex.
There she goes.
All right
So-
now. Okay, Rihanna.
But
Selling cat on the internet.
Listen, I'm having less sex, and also I think, you know, we blame everything on COVID, but I do better with like meeting people in person and having that exchange, but having less sex. And so it's a shame because all of this is going to waste. But I also don't feel that I'm necessarily as pressed about the hunt.
Don't worry, she's in her 2-week incubator phase
Oh,
from her vaccines.
Okay. But listen, my ideal situation would be to find someone that I'm sexually compatible with, and we have it's a hunky dory moment. But I found in my research that people, by far and large, are less interested in using condoms, and I can't say that I've always used protection, and every time that I have sex. But I will say, due to the advancement in medicine, my other struggle is that just because there's PrEP and people who are HIV positive can get treatment and be undetectable, I'm like, but what about the other shit? Who likes to be going to the damn clinic just because you can? So that's the meta moment I'm always having too. It's like, all right, do I want to, you know, listen, sex with no condoms feels amazing. We all know that. But at the same time, I'm like, it's Russian roulette. Definitely so Russian roulette. I go back and forth. I
think, I don't know, I've definitely evolved. Like before it was just like condom every time. Cannot say that's true. Wouldn't say it was. Post PrEP. I think that the thing about now being on PrEP, in addition to the fact that I can't contract HIV, but it's also, it forces me to go to the doctor on time every 3 months to get all my tests done. Whereas before it was just like, oh, is it time for me to go again? It was a little more loosey-goosey, to be honest. So I think that it's definitely helped me with, even if my sexual practices have been a little riskier, it has definitely helped with maintaining a regimen as far as testing and so on. And I think even in the situations where, so like, I guess right now in my life, I'm a little monogamish, I would say, in my sex life.
That's different.
Right?
You know.
That's different for me. But in doing that, and like in instances where like I have had a moment with someone that didn't involve a condom, that wasn't someone I was this close with, and I'm going to the clinic the next day.
Okay.
No, give me the shot. I was wondering, like,
go ahead.
You know that meme of Judge Judy when she's doing
I'm just like, child, I feel like I've been exposed. Give me the shot, the pill, whatever it would take. We'll figure out if it's negative when it comes back, but let's just clear anything up right now. So yeah, but I think that's been my life.
Okay.
Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, similar to you, I think that living in a post-PrEP world, condom usage is definitely less frequent than it was before. But I think that for me, it varies from partner to partner, and I think there's a series of different factors. I think comfort level is something that's really important. Like I think that it matters if the other person, like obviously, if the other person just feels more comfortable with the condom, wear the condom. Like, but if you have like a conversation and you feel like it checks out, live your life. You do take a risk, like Tony said. There could be a potential visit to a clinic, but I think that we're all adults, and you have to figure out what risk you're willing to take. And ultimately, like Damon said, it's your responsibility to protect yourself. So,
100%.
You know, while condom use is like less frequent these days, you know, I still think that there needs to be like those conversations that you're having, just to like establish some level of trust. I think that's still important.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, we like to have serious conversations with a tinge of fun. But we did want to acknowledge that a lot of the conversation we just had is centered around privilege that we have. I think obviously we all work our corporate jobs. We have top-rated healthcare. Even if we didn't, we live in New York City, where there are tons of options and places for us to have access to resources if we didn't have good healthcare. But that's not the case for so many people, especially in the Black queer community. And from here, I think we'd like to expand on the topic and conversation and bring in our guests for this week, guys.
So, yes, we're very excited about our guest today. And it's a very special guest. It's actually poetic how we met and how we have this like new budding relationship. And we're really excited about where we go from here. So DaShawn Usher is an award-winning advocate, published researcher, and celebrated leader within the LGBT community and HIV prevention field. DaShawn currently serves as the Program Officer, Communities of Color at GLAAD, get into it, and he is the founder and executive director of Mobilizing Our Brothers Initiative, otherwise known as MOBI, also major. And MOBI is a series of curated social connectivity programming for Black, gay, and queer people of color. We love that. So today we welcome DaShawn Usher to our Surface Level family.
Welcome.
Hey,
My goodness, so happy to have you here.
Yes.
So,
happy to be here.
yes, so we're not going to drill you with questions quite yet. Well, we are, but some light questions to start.
She's not going to
okay?
drill you yet.
She started out lying.
I had to catch myself. Hold on now. So what we like to do is we like to do a series of this or that questions just to familiarize you with our listeners and they can get a sense of who you are. And then, we'll go into some more topical questions. So,
Okay.
New York City or Atlanta?
Choose wisely.
Is it pre-COVID or because?
I mean, I don't know. Does
Think
COVID
about it.
exist in Atlanta?
No, it doesn't.
I didn't think so. What did you pick something? Atlanta. Okay.
I'm gonna have to come visit.
Yes, we have to go out there.
Yes.
Tony, the super spreader.
Well,
Part one.
a vaccinated bitch. So get your-
Hello. Driver or passenger?
Driver.
Okay. That's why you picked Atlanta. Be able to play 10 different instruments beautifully or speak 10 different languages fluently.
I love to travel, so languages.
Okay.
Yes.
I love that too. Successful career or happy family life?
Happy family life.
Okay.
Work.
Be decent in everything or incredibly talented in one thing?
Give me incredibly talented in that one thing.
Yes, focus those talents, baby. Text or call?
Calls.
Yeah.
Would you rather be painfully aware or blissfully ignorant?
Painfully aware.
Oh, I know that it is painful to be so aware sometimes. TV series or movie?
TV series.
Yes.
Dinner with Beyonce or Michelle Obama?
That's a hard
I
one.
knew this was going to create a pause.
That's hard.
I know. Like, I would like to go to dinner with Beyonce.
Yeah.
Just feel like we'll have way more to talk about.
Yes. Beach or city?
Beach.
Okay. And then when you're going to the beach, would you rather have a pre-made travel tour or build your own itinerary from scratch?
Built my own.
Okay.
Yes.
And you're in a relationship, right? Did I see that correctly?
thank you.
Okay. So I saw you two. You guys are so cute in your trip to Curacao.
Word.
So, imagine people like,
Y'all were there for like an,
You gotta-
an
you gotta-
extended stay.
You got to ask sometimes.
we be like, we broke up last night.
I'm like,
I'm up for a full month.
Right, no, still together, but yeah, Curacao for a month.
It looks
History
so
Month.
beautiful. Yeah, come on, Black History Month. I'm interested to know what your love language is. And for the listeners who don't know what the options are, they're words of affirmation, physical touch, receiving gifts, quality time, or acts of service.
My love language is words of affirmation.
Got it. So we'll make sure we add a lot of compliments throughout the episode.
Tell me I'm beautiful.
Please, beautiful. Again.
Word. All right. So, well, DaShawn, we thought that we start this conversation with an excerpt that we found on your Instagram page recently. And you said, and I quote, 5 years ago, 1 in 2 Black, gay, bi, and other men who have sex with men had a lifetime risk of contracting HIV, not because they had increased sexual risk, but because systems like healthcare and organizations continuously failed them by not prioritizing their holistic needs. And that was like a word, you know? And so we shared that, we talked about it, we discussed it, and we was like, let's start there. And it was a powerful statement. And we know this to be true, especially in more suburban, rural areas. So a lot of the work that you've done and are doing is centered around community management and engagement rooted in these issues. So can you first just tell us, like, what does that work involve? What does that look like?
Ooh, it's a lot in the sense of because I'm also a part of the community. And so it's not something that you just switch off, right? And so when we usually think about we can go to work and then we can like clock out. I'm still always going to be Black. I'm always going to be gay. And I'm constantly surrounded by people that are affected and impacted by HIV. And so for me, I think it's just understanding that how do you like create like spaces for folks, one, to tell their stories, but then two, like actually get them resources to be in a better position.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, it takes a big person and someone who has a lot to give. Like for me, it's giving like an Oprah Winfrey, just someone who has so much to pour out into the community, and it's a really big deal. And just keeping in line with that, like we know that cost is one of the most prohibitive aspects that prevent Black queer people from either seeking or getting treatment. And for instance, like it's really mind blowing that the retail price for PrEP is around $2,000 for a 30-day supply.
Insane.
Like gag, you know? And the retail price for HIV treatment is around $3,200 for a 30-day supply. It's insane. So we're curious to know from you, what other major barriers have you seen that are concerning when it comes to getting treatment and, you know, being sexually healthy?
Yeah, I think the first thing is like literally access. So when we think about like even before the cost, it's like if you don't have access to like actually access the clinic, the like doctor, it's like you don't have transportation, you don't have reliable like ways to actually navigate your health, right? You could have a job that provides actual health insurance, but you may end up not being able to take a day to actually go to the doctor. And so when you also think about your doctor visits, it's also one of these things where you have to be able to schedule around, right? Like, and have like that privilege to go to the doctor. Because some doctor's visits, they can be like 20 minutes, an hour. And then it's like, how does that like play into it like throughout the day?
Everyone doesn't have the type of job where you can just like leave work and go to an appointment in the middle of the day. And a lot of us don't think about that.
Right. One thing I wanted to talk about is that, like, do you, in your experience with community engagement, do you see that there's like just this lack of interest in pursuing, like seeking medication or healthcare? Because I think that one thing that's like, you know, top of the mind is that this vaccine rollout is having everyone talk again about like, you know, the way in which healthcare systems neglect our communities to start with, and how we have an apprehension to move forward with healthcare. Do you think that is at play at all? Do you think that people are just like, you know what? No, I don't even want to be bothered with this because I don't really believe that there's true value that can come from the healthcare system because of who I am as a person?
No, I think I think for me it's the opposite. Like where it's often people just don't know. Like we usually don't talk about like health literacy, right? And how are people actually aware of what's available? We have to also address that like there's often medical mistrust, there's often system failures. And so your experience of like trying to access healthcare, like there could be an instance that like just throws it off, right? I was going to go get a COVID vaccine. Well, my boyfriend was going to get one yesterday. And the line for the vaccine literally was wrapped around the Mercedes-Benz
It was giving Janet.
Stadium. It was given a Beyonce concert. You would think that. And it's ridiculous to think that like it has to come to that, like where like you have to like be quote unquote pre-qualified to even access a vaccine. But then also when you think about like your determinants of like what would cause you to either stay in that line because you feel as if like this vaccine will be valuable, or this medication, or this whatever it is that you're trying to access, or like just give up, right? Because you still have a whole day and a whole other like things, a life that like has to go on. And I think like oftentimes we don't talk about like how those actual infrastructure barriers like continue to prevent like folks, particularly people of color, from actually being engaged inside of healthcare.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so Deshaun, we talk a lot about HIV in this episode, and I'm happy that we are having these conversations. And I just want to kind of pivot a little bit, because HIV isn't viewed as a scary thing it once was anymore due to the advancement of medicine. However, now we're seeing a rise in our community being disproportionately affected by party drugs, specifically meth addiction. For instance, like there was an article put out by BuzzFeed News that that talked about how white gay men are destroying Black queer lives with party and play, sex, and meth addiction, seeing fatalities double from the drug to 13,000 between the year 2015 and 2018, according to the CDC. So we want to just ask you, like, what is the healthcare system doing to address the proliferation of meth addiction within the Black queer community, if anything?
They're doing the same thing that they always do whenever there's communities, particularly minority communities, that are impacted by like health disparities. Nothing and not enough. And it's crazy to think that like when meth, Tina, party and play, all the other descriptors of it like came out, and it was like this serious issue, particularly amongst like white gay men, there was like this intervention, right? Of like the campaigns to get people help, the campaigns to get people resources, the campaign to get people like clean, quote unquote, and to wean them off of like meth and restore their lives. And then when it took a shift, it's one of those things of where, again, like who is it impacting now? And it's similar, like in it, and you can literally draw the parallel between HIV, right? When it started and it was like known as this white gay disease, and then like how it took that turn, and once it started affecting more communities of color, the awareness went down, the campaigns went down, the resources went down, the like public outcry and support went down. And so it really is just understanding that, like, you know, sometimes these systems aren't fully set up to treat and preserve Black lives. And I think that's the conversation we don't often have as to why there aren't these campaigns, why there aren't these resources. And we know who's it impacting, and it's largely because it looks like us.
Right. And what you're saying is hits the nail on the head, because as you talk about like drugs that affect the white community in large numbers, like we've seen the response to opioid addiction be mostly sympathetic. You know, it's like, woe is me. But we're wondering, like, can Black queer folks expect the same response as it's related to, you know, meth addiction? Or will it be treated like the crack epidemic, where they criminalize our community instead?
Yeah, I think when it comes to meth, particularly within our community, it's how the community like responds to it. Because realistically, it's going to be us that are working towards like bringing the awareness, that like are working towards bringing the resources. But it is just thinking that when folks are impacted particularly what could be done, and what more could actually be done when we think about it.
Yeah, and speaking of what more can be done, as individuals, we always want to do our part, and we want to figure out how we can support and help our community because, like you said, it's a lot of the times it starts with us, and it's us making a push and doing the work. So we're wondering what we can do to win the fight against substance abuse. Like, what can we do as individual contributors?
I think it's about like stigma, right? And so it's like not shaming folks, not stigmatizing folks for using it. I think it's really trying to figure out why are folks using it, and really like honing as to like the why. We usually don't talk about the why, right? And so usually it's sometimes it stems from loneliness, it stems from like the thrill, sometimes it stems from someone literally having an interaction with someone and not even knowing like the effects of meth, because we're not also talking about like what is the effects of meth, how is it highly addictable, why is it highly addictable. And so I think like oftentimes it's again about like that community response to like be able to create this cultural approach to not stigmatizing and shaming folks for using meth.
Right. I think in my only knowledge or when I hear about meth, it's just it's a joke. The girls are giving like, is it meth? Like, that's what you see on, social media, or like when you're with your girlfriends and the girls are giving like, is it drugs? Is it meth? But Damon, you had a comment.
Yeah, no, I think I was, it was interesting. We were talking about this topic and we brought up the comparison to the sensitivity around opioid addiction and how people are stigmatized in other ways. And go with me for a second, but I was reading an article about Robin Thicke, and he was talking about his battle with like pill addiction and opioids and such. And he said something that I thought was really interesting. He was saying that when you have an addiction to pills, it's something that you can't see. Like, you don't reek of alcohol. It's like you're not losing your teeth or whatever the effects of certain other drugs are. So it's not as visible. So even when you have said addiction, people still view you as the human with the problem. Versus people will stigmatize you as, oh, this person's a crackhead. Or this person, like, when you see the results of meth on a person physically, I think that for not just our community, but as humans, you view them in a different light. When they're going through the same struggle, it's just that the effects are different. And I think that people approach them oftentimes with a lower level of sensitivity. And I think that's back to DaShawn's point about destigmatizing and really seeing the person and understanding the why. It's all the same. It's just because it may look a bit messier to you, it's easier to make that person out as a joke or as a caricature or something. So that was just a thought I was having. That was, I thought, an interesting take and something I hadn't necessarily thought about as much this week.
Definitely interesting.
Yeah.
Jordan, what do you think?
I mean,
it's also,
go ahead, Deshaun.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's also like it's easy for folks to disconnect, right? Like to compartmentalize that, like, oh, that's someone else's issue and that's what they're going through, and that's not like me.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think that I think Deshaun and Damon, you both made this point, but like really educating yourself on what the side effects and what the symptoms are, right? Because I think that, before I actually really took the time to like read about meth, I just thought it was like you just see it on someone's skin, you see it with someone's teeth, but there's so many other things that could potentially be a symptom, like psychosis and paranoia. And I think that if you sort of brace yourself for those side effects, I think it allows you, to your point, Damon, to have a little bit more compassion and see the humanity in someone. And I think it's very easy to see someone who's struggling from a drug addiction or misuse of drugs, and then you see them have a weak moment or have like a fit of anger or something that you just don't approve of, and immediately you sort of, dehumanize them in that moment, and you can't really see the humanity behind, the side effects and how the symptoms are showing up. So I think that educating yourself and preparing yourself that if you are dealing with a friend that has meth addiction, that these may show up and you need to sort of be prepared for them.
Right.
And you need to know how to respond to these side effects because they're very real and they aren't personal.
Right.
So I think that's super important to just like have a successful interaction if you're trying to intervene in a positive way.
Yep. So, DaShawn, as I mentioned earlier, like because of everything that's going on in our community, like you started a thing. You literally founded an entire moment, and you're the executive director, a moment, of Mobilizing Our Brothers Initiative, otherwise known as MOBI. And we just want to take this moment to ask, what is MOBI doing to help create awareness around sex health in our community? What sorts of things do you guys do?
Yeah, so with MOBI, the whole reason for starting it was largely because there wasn't a space for that I particularly had seen that like represented us, like that approached us. And it's funny because when you all were talking earlier about like your experiences of like sex education and how like condoms literally were like thrown and shoved down your throat and slapped across your face. It was one of those.
Yes.
Okay, you honed in on that moment.
but it's true, and because it really is, it creates like it's a real thing of like this condom fatigue. Because I don't think folks truly understand like if you're a Black queer person, what it means to navigate like your adult life or your coming of age life, if you're particularly HIV negative, because that takes work, right? And so it's not just something that like you just wake up and, you know, pray for the best. It's like, no, you have to actively take measures to like remain HIV negative. Similar to if you seroconvert and you're a person living with HIV, you still have to take measures to remain like healthy and remain like undetectable, like for yourself mainly and for others. But it's just really just thinking like we just like don't have like those spaces to have those conversations and have organizations or initiatives that look at us holistically. Right. It's usually like looking at the behavior. And so for me, when it came to MOBI, it was like there's plenty of organizations that have been around for 30, 40 years that have gotten funding to do work in quotations with Black gay men. Particularly to prevent HIV, particularly to do like direct service work. And then you hear statistics of 1 in 2 and no one is doing anything. And so when I heard that statistic in 2016 and 2017, I wrote the grant for MOBI. Because it was like, if someone else isn't going to do it, then like we have to do something, at least in the meantime. And even if it's just like creating programming that links community to direct resources so that they know that it's available, and hold community-based organizations that are getting funding for our community accountable. But also creating a safe space for our community to come and convene and meet those providers where they are. So we do MOBI Talks, which is this series of personal and professional development talks. And for us, like, it's shown the gamut of professionalism. So it's not just like doctors, lawyers, attorneys. It's like, we also want to know like the porn stars, and we also want to know like, because again, those are people of influence within our community, right? And porn is a whole industry and a profession. And so it's one of those things that we can't ignore. And oftentimes, again, we try to like ignore certain things without addressing the full person. But then also having other folks that like, you know, are in entertainment, other folks that are doing like fashion, other folks that could just, again, provide like these blueprints to let us know that it's possible. And so it's really just showcasing like this possibility model, because we can't talk about holistic healthcare and holisticness if we don't show like what's actually possible. and sort of kind of learn and create that network for other folks. And then we do MOBI Fest, which is a wellness festival. And what we usually did, again, pre-COVID, was to do, like, partner with other community-based organizations across the city. So then it would, like, one, raise, like, that these clinics and these organizations have services for Black gay men. And it's not just limited to your sexual health. So they have nutrition classes, they have fitness classes, they have career workshops. It's just like trying to highlight those other services that they offer. But oftentimes, whenever they see Black gay men, it's, would you like an HIV test, or would you like to get linked to care? And it's like, whoa, I just came here to, probably get help with my resume.
Can you just format my resume,
so, right, but it's like, but those things aren't usually offered to our community, even though they exist within those organizations. And so MOBI Fest was just like this opportunity for people to take ownership of their health, while being connected to these different services that are available for free, often to them, to then celebrate like that ownership that they would have taken.
You know what? That boyfriend of yours, he got a young Black king on his hands. Okay, like, how so impressive, and it's impressive because it is. It's giving like the moment, and we want to say how proud we are of the work that you're doing, and we are so happy to like know you in this capacity and be able to do our part and participate and help. We've been to MOBI Fest, we participated, and that actually it's a great segue to how we like to end, because we wanted to talk about what's coming up. Anything that's in the works. And you also work at GLAAD, so if there's something on that front too, like, please let people know where they can find more information, where they can follow you, just all of that. We put it all out there for us.
Put it all out. All right. So if you want to learn more about MOBI, you can go to mobi-nyc.com. Follow us on Instagram at just literally at MOBI-NYC. We have the talks that is happening. So that'll roll out in April. And then it's a digital series, so it'll be part 4. And this one is going to really center like entrepreneurship and innovators within different industries. So then we can continue to amplify and elevate those folks. And then we have MOBI Fest coming back again, June 3rd. So super excited about that. The talent this year is going to be amazing. But it's all Black, all queer, and we, are super excited about that. So stay tuned for that. And then on the GLAAD front, it's like so many things.
As I can imagine. And
right. It was like, and you could learn about GLAAD at GLAAD.org, GLAAD.org. But I do a lot of work with communities of color, particularly across the South, and have like this focus on HIV, with helping people tell their stories and amplify and train them. So I'm sure there'll be trainings happening. There's some consultancy things that I'm doing with Hollywood and like trying to tell better stories. So if they're like, so It's a Sin, It's Funny was one of those things that we had talked about earlier, but like being able to support that, because I mean, you're right on to everything that you said, but it is just thinking of like, how do we continue to tell like other stories about HIV and AIDS that also aren't centered around like white twinks. So yeah.
You know what? If Booked and Busy was a Black gay man, we're listening to him right now. Love that.
Cool. All right, guys. So that's all the time we have this week. Let us know your questions and comments at our Instagram page at Surface Level Podcast, or our official website at surfacelevelpodcast.com. You can watch our responses in our new video series, Surface Level Sound Off on Instagram and YouTube. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, subscribe, and remember, stay curious.